Hello and welcome to this recording about the four types of human being as described by the human design system. Well, human body is penetrated and surrounded and in fact animated by its electromagnetic field, which is called aura and which can be easily measured nowadays. This aura is something that totally determines the way we see reality, the way we interact with reality, the way we function in the world. And based on certain configurations within our design, based on the connections and definition in the centers in our human design chart, we can determine that any given design, any given chart actually belongs to one of the four types of beings according to their aura. So let's take a look at this presentation. And we're looking at this picture where you can see the four types depicted in this way. Let's take a look at some of the characteristics of these four types of aura and what it actually means. Um, well, here you have a list of some of these characteristics where you can see that, for example, manifestor aura is very compact, it's closed off, it's impacting, and so on. We'll go through that in details in the respective recordings on each of the four types. But this is the slide that you've seen in the first class of the Living Your Design course. Let me just go over it real quick and highlight the key things that we need to speak about when we speak about the types. Body graph is a map of human aura. And these 9 energy centers over here are organs of perception that through which we relate to different aspects of our life. And there are all these gates, these numbers, and these channels where the two numbers are meeting and create a channel. And that represents certain intelligence, quantum intelligence of our vehicle, of our biological being. These are the gifts and talents that we were born with and that we're here to live out. In most cases, 98% of the people in the world actually, one of those colored in centers, one of those centers that are colored in most cases, one of them is the center of what we call the authority, our voice of truth, which is where we make decisions energetically, where our aura makes its decisions energetically through that particular center. Now, more on that in the recording on authorities. And each type of aura has its own strategy, which is the ideal way of functioning, which is how we can ideally function in the world so that we meet the least resistance. It is how we naturally are. It is the most easiest way of how we can function in the world based on our aura. Now, these four different types are really different from one another. And if you speak to a person that's from a different type than you are, it's almost as if you were speaking to a dolphin. It's such a different worldview, such a different set of experiences. And so it really helps to understand the types and understand what works for each of us and how we can respect that. So let's take a look at the type determination. How can you see from just looking at the chart itself what type you're actually looking at? Obviously, it's something that if you have the human design software, MMI, you can you can see written in the chart as you generate it, or as you generate your chart from any of the websites where you can do that. It says what type you are. But in order to understand the types, it is important to understand the background mechanics of why we are looking at the type we're looking. There are, of the 9 energy centers, there are 4 centers that are called motors, and they are the sources of energy. They give off energy, each in their own particular way, because obviously each center is different, is related to a different area of our lives. and gives off a different kind of energy. Yet these four centers are motors. And it is important to notice which are these motors, and in particular to pay attention to this sacral center, which is the red box second from the bottom. And let's move to the next slide, and you'll know why that is. So you can actually determine what type you're looking at through asking three very simple questions. First of all, the question is there a definition? Okay. Now, definition is anything that's defined in terms of colored in centers and the channels that connect them. Okay. So basically the question says, are there any centers that are colored in? And if no, then you're looking at the chart of a reflector. You can see here the various different charts of a reflector type. However the chart looks, they all have one thing in common, and that is that there is no defined center in the chart. All the centers are white. There is no definition, basically, as we say. So that means that you are looking at the reflector type. Okay, there is no definition. You're looking at the reflector. That's only the case for 98.5% of the charts. So vast majority, 98 people out of 100 will have a definition. And then if there is a definition, the next question is there a sacral definition? And this is the sacral center. Okay, so whenever there is a sacral definition, that means you're looking at the generator type. The sacral center is defined. That is, it's defining characteristics. And it doesn't matter how the chart looks, they all have one in common. The sacral center is defined always. Anytime the chart has a defined sacral center, it means you're looking at the generator chart. And more on generators again in the respective recording on the generator type. So these two are kind of immediate. If there is definition, if there is no definition, immediately straight away you can see at first glance immediately that you're looking at the reflector chart. If there is a definition and the sacral is defined, immediately straight away you can see that you're looking at the generator type. Then it gets a little more complicated and simply in terms of experience because you can see it anyways, but it takes a little longer to realize. And here we come to this question. If there is no sacral center defined, there is no sacral center defined. If the sacral is white, is not red, is white, then the question is there a motor connected to the throat? Now, why motor connected to the throat? Motor is one of these three centers in case of a manifestor that needs to be connected to the throat, not sacral, obviously, because then we would be looking at the generator. And that's what makes a manifestor, where the source of energy is connected to the place where the energy can be immediately expressed by what we say, by what we do. This is what it means to manifest. Now, this can happen directly, as you can see here, from the ego directly to the throat, or from the solar plexus directly through these two other channels to the throat. So basically these three channels are what we call manifesting channels. But then it can happen through a combination of channels. For example, Ra-Uru-Hu, the founder of human design, who was a manifestor, had the ego center connected through the G, and that was connected to the throat through these two channels that you can see over here. It's still a manifesting chart because there is a motor connected to the throat, even though it goes through the G center. You can see a similar situation over here. Solar plexus and the ego are connected through the spleen to the throat, but they do eventually reach the throat. Or here, where it's the ego directly. Okay, so as long as there is a motor connected to the throat, it can also be, for example, let me just make this up. If you had the root defined to the spleen, and spleen defined to the G, and the G defined to the throat, it would still be a manifestor chart because the root is the motor and eventually reaches through the series of defined channels all the way to the throat. That's what makes manifestor a manifestor. And you can see it's about 8.5% of the people in the world manifestors. And basically everybody else is a projector. Okay, the reason for that is that while there are 3 manifesting channels that you could see over here, 1, 2, 3, and while there are 11 generating channels that you can see over here, these are channels that go from the sacral to another center. All in all, there are actually 22 projecting channels, and these are all the projecting channels that you're looking at over here. These are the channels that do not connect throat to the motor, and they do not originate at the sacral center. Okay, so projector chart can be really complex, can be a little challenging to recognize straight away, and it's in fact really the most complex type there is, because you can have as many as 8 centers defined, except for the sacral, obviously, or as little as 2 centers defined, and you're still looking at the projector type. Okay, so this is how we can determine what type we're actually looking at. And again, the reason why the aura functions in that way, or what it means that it has this particular configuration, I'm going to go into details about that in the respective recordings for each of the 4 types. So let's take a look at this slide, which is highlighted strategy. Based on the inner energetic makeup, the aura manifests in one of the 4 ways. I've said that already. That's why we speak about the 4 types. This is important. Type is not a psychological characteristics. It's not some kind of a typology. It's not about how your personality functions. It's really the background mechanics of your bioenergetic vehicle, of your being, and your electromagnetic field, of your aura. This is the type. Each type has its natural way of functioning, which is called strategy. I've mentioned that already. And the strategy is the path of least resistance to full manifestation of your potential. Strategy is a term that comes from the military, and the purpose of strategy is victory. And the victory means for each of the 4 types something different. Manifestors are looking for peace, projectors for success, generators for satisfaction, and reflectors for surprise. So let's take a look at the 4 types themselves and how they can interact with one another, and let's build it up from the ground up. Let's start with this slide, where you can see the basic characteristics according to I Ching, according to the ancient Chinese knowledge of the yin and yang as the 2 opposite forces that give rise to our material world, to our reality. Yin is this broken line, this line which has an empty space in the middle of it, and it's associated with negative, passive, female, receptive, dark, night, cold, soft, wet, winter. And yang has this full line, which is unbroken, it's full, and it's associated with qualities such as positive, active, male, creative, light, day, hot, hard, dry, and summer. Okay? Now, the reason why I start talking about this is that to understand the types, we can understand them really well in terms of the yin and yang and their combinations. So in this slide, you can see that there is this yang force, the creative force on top, and that there is this yin force, this constructive power this constructive power which can take into itself something. Um, on the other end of this wheel, of this circle, where the yin has this quality of being open to something, and that something which the yin is open to is this yang, is this yang creative force which comes sometimes like a out of the blue, like a flash, like a lightning, and it brings something new, something that the yin is open to and can take into itself to begin generating, to begin building this constructive power in itself. So let's take a look at the next slide, where we can see how these qualities align with the two of the four types, and that is the manifestor type and the generator type. Now, this is the slide, and this series of these three slides are from my teacher, John Oblivion. It's one of his original works in human design, and on this one, obviously, on the type interaction. So what he said is that you can see the manifestor as this really creative force, this uh, diagram yang yang, where these two yang lines really bring a lot of creativity, and that's archetypally what the manifestor type does. It's not that other types aren't creative. Every person is inherently creative being. It's just that manifestors are archetypally the representatives of this yang creative force. Why? Well, because they are bringing something unexpected. They're bringing something new into existence. It's what they do as a type, that they're initiating, they're shaking things up. They're initiating certain movement and certain changes, and they are totally unpredictable and inherently creative as type. And so this diagram of two yang lines is associated with the manifestor force on one hand, and then the diagram of two yin lines is associated with the generator, with this constructive power, where generators are people that are here to build something, that generators are the builders of the world. These are the people that have access to the sacral energy, which is the life's energy, which is the sexual energy, which is the energy of the planet Earth. Think about jungle. That is the generator force. That's the generator field. Everything grows and and is just so lush. And whenever something dies, and a tree falls, from the trunk, again, all kinds of organisms are beginning to sprout and thrive and live. And that's the planet Earth. This is the planet generator, as Raoul used to say. And this creative force, you can also see it in a way as the impulse from the unmanifested plane, from the causal plane, in a way, um, where the manifestors are downloading something new into the world, into existence, and generators have the capacity to take it into themselves, take this impulse. You can see this broken line as the space in the ground where you push the seed, of a plant, and then you covered it with the soil, and you water it, and then all of a sudden this seed begins to sprout, and there is this new life being born, because the earth was seeded with this creative force. And so it's a metaphor, obviously. The generator type is the type with a lot of power, a lot of uh, constructive power, a lot of energy to build something, and but but that power in and of itself is clueless. We generators, I'm a generator, we don't know what to do with all that energy, but the energy functions in response to what comes to it, in response to life at large, basically. That's why the generator type is associated with these two yin lines, with this diagram yin-yin. Um, how do the other two types fall into this picture? Well, projector is depicted here through this yang yin diagram, where you can see that there is this yang quality in a projector, this certain um, um, capacity to face the manifestor's impact, because manifestors are here to impact the world. And then at the same time, this yin quality through which they can relate to the generator. And so projectors are uh, really the mediators. Projectors are the people that are able to withstand the manifestor's impact, and they can deal with it, and they can mediate and help generators to deal with the impact of a manifestor, because manifestor can easily be too intense for this life force. It can be too much. Manifestor's impact can be really intense and to the point of being severe. And so projectors are the type that can see how generators are doing with their life force, with their energy, with their projects, with their building projects, with their construction projects, how they use their life force. And they can see how things could be better, how things could be improved on the level of what's being happening. And they are the mediators. They can say, hey guys, this thing that you're doing over here is all nice and well, but if you just change this little thing over here, uh, you'll get much better results. Projectors are the system analysts, and they can see what can happen and how things are happening, and they're really observing what's happening. They are the eternal students of humanity. They are born to understand the systems. They're born to understand how things work, and they can help generators with their work, actually, by being the guides, where the manifestor comes as this initiating force, which informs, which impacts the world out of the blue, unpredictably, because you can't really predict it. Even manifestors themselves are unpredictable to themselves. But all of a sudden, something gets born through them into the world. They just put it out there through their aura, push it out into the existence, and then everybody else is left to deal with that, right? But it's not always that easy. It's typically challenging to deal with that impulse. Even though it can be exciting, it's still challenging sometimes. And yeah, so the projectors are like the construction supervisors, let's say, where the generators are the people that have their heads, really, and the minds and eyes focused on the work at hand. Projector is looking kind of all around and sees that, guys, you should probably stop working at this point because there is a truck coming, and let it pass, and then you can do something else while you wait. And projectors can be these mediators and these guides as long as they're given attention, as long as they're invited, they can participate, and their capacity to withstand this yang impulse. There is this certain yang quality to a projector, is mixed with the capacity to be the guide, which leads in a very uh, uh, yin-like way. It's not leading like a major or general in the military. It's being a guide. It's being a guide and guiding, sometimes even through just asking the right questions. And that's how the projectors fall into this picture. They're helping generators to with their work, basically. And when we look at the natural partnership between the types, generators and projectors are really geared and designed to work together. I'm not talking about relationships or a romantic partnership, but really projectors are here to guide generators. I mean, manifestors don't care about any kind of guidance because they're going to do what they want to do. Nobody can convince them otherwise, especially when they're in their true self. Generators are really the ones that need the guidance from the projector and that can benefit from it greatly. And finally, you can see the reflectors here. And reflectors are the people that, as you know, have all 9 centers open. And they are looking at the whole picture, and they see things in a very unique way. They have a very unique perspective, and that is they're looking at whether other people are in alignment within themselves, whether they're in harmony, whether their energy centers operate in harmony with one another, whether they're really ready to wake up, whether they're really able to see what's present in the situation and use that and ready to wake up. And so reflectors are the people that can, through their just through their presence or through what they do, and say, but many times even just through their presence. By being present in the situation, they can have this uplifting effect, like bubbles in the champagne, and that's why it's this evaporation over here, because they're the type that can take the whole process to the next stage, to the next level, kind of as if you were playing a game, a computer game, and you're on the first level, which is being initiated by the manifester, um, is being primarily done by the generator. Projectors really help in that. They really guide the generator how to go about in that level. And reflector is the person or the type that sees, okay, we've covered the first level. We're ready to go to the next stage, and can, through their presence, uplift the whole situation to the next level, and can send the message to manifestors and say, hey, manifestor, maybe it's time for you to initiate something else. Because manifestors, as they initiate, then they can rest, and they can hopefully be at peace as long as their impact is sufficient. And that is if they function according to their strategy. So this is kind of an archetypal picture of the uh, type cooperation, how the four types can interact, type interaction. Um, as I said, projector and generator is really geared to work with one another. Reflector and manifestors are the natural partners for themselves as well. And it's an archetypal picture. It's not always this way, obviously. And it's not that only projectors can be the guides. It's not only that generators are responding and have power to generate, to build something. It's not only that the reflector can uplift. It's not only that the manifestor can be creative, obviously. There is a combination of yang and yin within all of us. We're talking about the archetypal picture here. An archetype can never be fully embodied in the material, in the world of material forms. This is archetypal picture. In us, in human beings, we have a combination of yang and yin, all of us. For example, I am a generator, but I'm a so-called manifesting generator. And my design is really very yang, but it's very yang uh, in a way that it functions, but it functions as a yin design. It functions as a generator design. I'm here to wait, to respond. And as I respond, when something comes in, then I can be active. Then I can be quite yang, which I am. I have a friend who's a manifester. She's a woman, and also given to her particular design, she's extremely yin in her design. But the overall picture is that she's a manifester. So there is a foundational yang quality to her design, and then the way she actually functions is very yin, even though she's a manifester. So this is an archetypal picture. It's not to say that this is always like this, or that only manifestors are yang and creative, only generators are yin and constructive, and so on, right? We all have combination. This is just reference that helps us to understand the interactions between the types. Um, Generators are busy maintaining the world, the life force. They're the one that care for the life force. They're the caretaker of life. They're the procreators and caretakers of life. The reason why I say that is because that's the theme of those generating channels there. And here comes a manifestor along, walks into a village of generators where everybody's kind of uh, busy doing their thing, caring for their garden, and going to town's hall meeting and so on. And here comes a manifestor along, and the manifestor has something to say, as manifestors do. As I said, manifestors can download certain things from the unmanifested, from the causal plane in a way, and they have these new information that upsets the status quo. Manifestors always rock the boat. And it's pretty disturbing for the generator. It can also be quite annoying for a generator. Manifestor can be saying, if you look at your situation, what I'm bringing here can be really practical and can really work for you. You know, this is something new that I'm bringing for you. And the question is, well, is it too disturbing? Is it going to wreck the village? Is it going to mean that if we implement this new thing, we'll actually have nothing to eat, or is just going to be too intense or too disturbing? And projectors are here to say to a manifestor, you know, calm down a little bit, calm down. I can parcel it out in little bits so that generator can actually hear what you're saying without being disturbed too much. So the manifestor inspires the evolutionary impulse. It brings the progress we need, but doesn't know how much and at what rate we can take it in. Yeah? Projector mitigates the impact of a manifestor so that it doesn't paralyze the life force, which can easily happen. And generators are just saying, life is good, let's have lunch together. And then the manifestor comes in, projector can stand up to that impact, which otherwise would be too intense and too disturbing for generators, and can deal with that impact and parcel it out for generators in non-disruptive ways. And that's how generator can absorb that impact, and yeah, the life force is suspicious of the new. We as human beings are not always fond of changes, and for a good reason, because the change can mean that we die, that we don't make it. Life force is suspicious of the new. And so it's important to have somebody who can guide us in how to digest this new thing that comes along with the manifestor. And then reflector comes along and can lift it all up to the next level and tells the manifestor, go meditate on the mountain and rest. Give them some time to deal with your impact, okay? When they're ready for more, we're going to call you. When we need another impulse from you, we'll let you know. But for now, just rest and be at peace, okay? So this is this kind of a archetypal picture of the four types of human beings, and you can see that we're grouping the types in different ways. One of the ways to look at the four types is that two types are the energy types, it's a manifestor and generator. And there are two non-energy types, which is a projector and reflector. Another way of looking at the types is that there is a generator, and then there is everybody else. This is planet generator. Ra spoke a lot about how challenging um, and difficult it can be for the non-sacral beings, meaning people that don't have a defined sacral center, non-sacral beings to function in this world where the sacral energy is such an overpowering presence, and it can be such a strong conditioning for people who do not have the sacral center defined. Um, that's another way of looking at the four types. And yet another way of looking at the four types is that there is a reflector and everybody else. Reflector is such a unique and such a different and just really, really different type from all the other three types. We'll speak about that when we get to the reflector type and its recording there. Um, we can read these sentences. Manifestors can initiate to inform. Inform is the strategy to inform and educate, to be peaceful. This is what we call signature. Manifestors ultimately can reach the peace by putting out and manifesting all their gifts and talents in order to initiate and impact the life force. Generator can respond. Response is the strategy to connect. And by the way, connection is another word for response. To connect and to build living systems. And as they do that, they can be satisfied. And satisfaction is the signature of the generator. We can be satisfied only if we respond, because only in response do we actually get to live out all those talents and gifts that we have in our design without unnecessary resistance. That's what the strategy is for, response. Projector can appreciate, recognize, guide, and facilitate when invited. invitation is the strategy. Wait to be invited. Then you can be successful in guiding, facilitating, recognizing, and appreciating other people. And they will appreciate and recognize you, obviously. It's a two-way street. And reflector can see awakening, uplift, and change levels in order to be surprised. That's the signature, exhilarating surprise, that they see something new, something different, somebody who is different, who's ready for the next step, who's ready to be unplugged from the matrix. Okay, so in conclusion, we are kind of at the end of this recording. Each of the four types has its strategy, its unique and ideal way of functioning, which is their path of least resistance. Each of the four types has its quest. Um, if we're not living according to our strategy, we're meeting resistance, and there is a not-self theme that is present for the people of a particular type. It comes up as this negative feeling of resistance, and each of the type has its signature, which is what we ultimately get if we behave correctly. That doesn't mean to behave as the law says, or as your partner says, or as whoever says, but it means behaving in accordance to your energetic body, accordance to your aura. So very briefly, manifestor is here to inform, impact other people, to reach the peace, and if they don't do that, they can be pretty aggravated or angry. Generators are here to wait to respond, to find out who they really are, because in response they can really live out their gifts and talents. If they don't respond, they can be really frustrated or angry. Otherwise, if they do respond, they can be really satisfied. Projectors are here to wait for the invitation. They're really looking at the other person. Who is the other person? If they don't wait to be invited, they can experience a lot of bitterness because they're not recognized and or appreciated. But if they do manage to wait for the invitation, that's where they can be successful in guiding other people. And reflector waits for the lunar cycle. They're really related and connected to the lunar cycle. They're looking not at just one person, but at the whole groups of people. Who are they? Unless they follow their design, they can be easily disappointed because they meet people that are always the same and situations that are always the same. But when they are following their design, they get to live out this exhilarated surprise where they just see, oh, this is something new. Here is somebody who's different. That's something that we can uplift. These people are ready to be unplugged from the matrix. They're ready for the next step. And so this is the overview chart for the four types. We're going to go through each of the four types in details in the next recording. So I hope you enjoyed this, and take care. Bye-bye. That's it.